And many of those houses, you know, well kept. Anyway, when we got up in the morning, we went to I think Captain somewhere where they have seafood. I wanted some seafood. And I didn't want them to, you know, cook and go through a whole bunch of stuff. So we went to this place and I got seafood. We came back on the computer, and I was talking to them before I, you know, went to rest, getting ready for the morning. So in the morning they were taking me, they sent a limo to pick me up to go to Constantine Hall. So in the morning I'm going out and we go around the corner. That same house, the gates were off. Car was going, the hose was off the side, the front doors were out, and a couple of windows were out. On the way to Constantine Hall, you know, one of the things they wanted to do, while I was there, truthfully, because I actually stayed out there for about a week and a half. And one of the contractors that have been doing windows where I stayed, in the front where the house, it had two ridge peaks. The house, the way it was designed in the front, brick and offset. And water had rotted the sill. And so the contractors were doing the sills, doing some of the brickwork, and replacing the windows. Anyway, the contractors had let them hanging, and the windows were in the front room like for a couple of months. And so the sister asked me would I stay long enough to do the windows, because they know I'm a house operator. And I looked at it and it was all rotted and stuff, so I said I'd fix it. So I just stayed there and I cast the windows, put new sills in, put the windows in. And they took me around in Detroit. They said, you know, you could make a fortune here, type thing, you know. You already know I'm not interested in that. I've been there, done that. That's not where I'm at right now. And we drove literally for miles straight. Beautiful structured houses that you couldn't get here in this area for $400,000 and $500,000. 5,000. I'm going to repeat. Houses, something like, if you go up down here and you go in certain areas and you see these houses that single homes with nice lawns, that you're not touching them for less than 4 and 5 and 10,000. Ordinary row houses that were really nice, 1,000 notes, begging you to get. People would go to work, come home, their stuff is gone. You could ride miles and miles and miles, and you literally see. You know that movie that Will Smith did? Legend. And you seen The Neighborhood? In fact, that's Detroit. For real. But that's the point that I'm making. Now, back to the point on confessed judgment, when you brought that issue up about the mortgage. Say if you went and got a mortgage for a house, right? In the instruments that they have you signing, they'll sit there while you're signing these papers. In it is a confessed judgment. You already gave the house up when you signed the mortgage. And when they foreclose, and they can do it when they want to, they call what is called a loan, then you're starting to argue on the foreclosure, even if you so-called made what you think is payments, and they won't take it, they'll still take the house. It's called confessed judgment. That's why I told you to write that down, because I want you to remember that when you go into the auction block in the Chancery Court, and they're talking about foreclosure, that's really what's taking place. Because you didn't own it, and they never sold it to you. And you were listed as a tenant in a sharecropping agreement. And they assigned themselves as your FOFR, as trustee, and within 72 hours they sold it to another corporate operation who assigned themselves as your trustee. And at any time, they could have foreclosed it because it was already foreclosed. How can you go through a closure, and then have a foreclosure? So we never, we need not go there. So I'm telling you again why for years we've always been telling people to set up a trust. Because they don't know that they're dealing with a de facto operation. They're thinking they're dealing with a de jure operation. Are we clear? So that goes back to the issue of Franklin Delano Roosevelt funding the next United States corporation shell that they created after the one that Wilson set up, after the one that they crashed since was in operation since Lincoln's assassination, which were 3 different United States corporation shells. Sound alike, they're different shells. Are we clear? That's the birth certificate issue that everybody keeps running after. Go ahead, Dr. Nail.
Islam, when you say shells, because I know you've been talking about corporate shells a long time, and I know what happens, say, if a corporation, I think in terms of when a corporation fails and they go and they set up another corporation. I mean, the same people are running
it.
Yeah, same people are running it, but it might have some difference in the name of it. But
that's where you see when the Pope wrote that letter to Obama,
and it was different ways.
And the different spellings?
Yes.
That's what it is.
So they kept changing, the nuance was slight changes in the spelling.
Because they were in fact different corporate shells.
So the one that they set up that is incorporated here in the state of Delaware as a religious nonprofit in 1989, I believe.
There you go.
Yeah, they set the United States.
There you go.
Right, 1989. They incorporated in
their
the state of Delaware.
Documents, but the average person can read it, and for whatever rationale, it never dawns on them what they're reading. It's not that it's not there to see. Not unlike the instrument that we shared with people years ago with the United States Corporation when they re-registered it again in 1925. And this is just before Roosevelt pledged the birth certificates, bodily instruments, to fund the shell that dumped. Now, and as you already know, this is not new, nor subject matter that we've never covered. It's just that for some reason people, whether they're shell-shocked or whatever, they hear things, they collect data, and really don't pay attention to that you've already told them. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And you could tell by conversations that people have as the doo-doo hits the fan, they're kind of blindsided by these things and go into a state of alarm, which means that they didn't get it. Do you get where I'm coming from? But yet, they said they got it. And it becomes apparent that they didn't. Now, sometimes they don't think it's important, but when you understand what's really going on, you're looking at it different. You're seeing a storm. They're looking at differences of opinion, different school of thought. Their concepts are on that surface. They're not seeing the real danger. They're analyzing the data of how you look at it, not knowing that you're in danger. Do you understand where I'm coming from with that? So you try to find different angles of telling them the same thing when you recognize they don't get it. But they say they got it.
Right.
But their conversations and the problems that they encounter and not having a concept of how to handle it indicates they have the data. They don't get it. And so you'll see people get caught into processes, whether it's UCCs, financial statements, different things like that. The HMO operations, authenticating the birth certificate, all of these things which are related to the Global Estate Trust or Global World Trust. But if you remove that as a subject matter, which is a tributary, and a subordinate issue related to the larger body of operations. If you ask them, don't talk about the straw man. Don't talk about authenticating the birth certificate. Tell me about the Global Estate Trust. And most of them go silent. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Which means they don't really know what they're dealing with, because the persons who sold them the processes are not telling them all of the history. And so when they try to save their estates, they're blindsided again and they can't defend their position. And rather than these persons who they think is their government giving them remedy, they're actually attacking them. And they get confused, which means they didn't know that these people were de facto. What do you mean you didn't know? Yeah, I know what the birth certificate is. It's the bodily instrument. And I know the difference between a allodial title and a mortgage in deed. But when you study, when you look at the problems that they're running into, and the things that are surfaced around them with their interchanges with local so-called government people, you can see they did not understand what they're dealing with at all. They just collected data. And so we're trying to get people to really think for real and start getting, they themselves must be their remedy. And they're looking for people who have information in these areas to be their remedy. It's not going to happen. Every man and woman and child must confess their own. Someone can assist you, but you must confess your own. But you need to know what your own is. Now this is back to the estate issue. All right? So the confessed judgment is already introduced when they have you signing those mortgages, which means you've already abandoned the estate. This is why they list people in mortgages and deeds as tenants, because they absolutely are. Under feudal law, are we clear? And so as a reminder, without going into it, this is why it's important it's not that you don't consider what Wilson did with the Chancery, the members of the Chancery and the church at Jekyll Island. They'll just talk about the bankers. It's the members of the Chancery and the Circle Church on Fleet Street, England, that met with Woodrow Wilson. All clear. And the bankers, which were actually board members for the Jesuits under the Pope, who owns the United States Corporation Company. Get this through your heads. If the Pope comes anywhere in any what they call Western countries, the people have to pay for his security. Pay for the parades, pay for the security, pay for the flights, pay for the food, clothing, and everything else. And the president, whoever he or she may be, is second step. Are we clear? To the masses who don't understand the politics, they're saying they're showing more importance to the Pope than our president. That president is his employee. That's right. Get over it. If you don't understand this, you can't understand the politics. Go ahead, Dr. Naomi.
Islam, and to give another show of who he was and what was going on, he rode around in a Fiat.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So he rode around in a Fiat, so that was another way of speaking to, the state of currency.
Fiat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And that's also why, when they stole the people's finances to bail General Motors and Chrysler, that's why Fiat took over. You need to really know the relationship to everything. It's not circumstantial. One who understands how things really work, that none of this surprises you. You could be disappointed. Oh man, but you already knew it was coming. You're not blindsided. But the average person is. And again, like you'll see people, say operatives, right, among our own. The Romans refer to them as conversos. when seeing, like, say if we're operative on the estate issue, and we're causing the local politicians problems by nationalizing people and making estate claims, they will pick the weak one among you to come in and to divide your activity and get you fighting each other in order to buy more time. The argument may appear legitimate, and it may be legitimate. Most of it's petty. Due process takes no action whatsoever, which means they'll slander you, no due process, no fair hearing. They'll put you up on the Facebook website and say that you wore green sneaks to the prom with pig lipstick and stuff like that, really. And say that you shouldn't be allowed to come here anymore. And figuring that people who don't understand constitutional principles, because they've been trained on the feudal law, will all jump on the bandwagon, half of them carrying ropes to hang you. No one ever approached you, ever gave you fair hearing or anything. They just slandered you. And half these people will jump on the bandwagon helping them to do it. Then after they do it, you just broke the unity that you had, which was strength that was building, which is really what the attack was all about. And most of the time, we fall for it. Right? Then they come little by little and come at you individuals and knock you out of the way. And it's worked perfectly. Problem that they're having is not working with the rest of the world anymore. Are we clear? Because the rest of the world was already aware of this, but the people here are slow. Or in part. Well, it's true. Slower in part. It's true. Now, so the deal of it is, because many of them are your family members, what happens to them also happens to you. And you will be concerned logically, but you're faced with the unfortunate condition of this. If your right arm offends you, cut it off. It's hard to do. But if you're going to survive, you're going to have to recognize you're going to have to do that. This is why you can't afford to get too personally attached, because of what's really actually going on. Go ahead.
This is an online question.
Go ahead.
From Rock Williams, it says, if we know that information is in the contract, can a person ask for that language to be removed before signing?
It's called amendment and by affidavit. What I think from hearing the question, there's an assumption of what you call fixed form contract.
Right. It's a contract of each.
They're talking fixed form contract? Yeah. Well, we were talking earlier, right? And this is back to one, and this is redundancy, but knowing what a contract is in the first place, knowing what constitutes a contract, two or more competent beings. You can't be a minor or minority. You must be of legal, lawful, and competent age. The contract must show substance for substance to the fundamental rule of trade. It cannot be vague, and it cannot be linear. Linear means a contract where one person signs it and the other doesn't, but yet the other is holding the one who signs it to the contract. In law, it's not a contract. So first you must know what a contract is to argue it. It is no different than this in law. And this is back to the point. To the masses, this is money. Right? To the fact, it is not. This, by law, is known as private commercial paper, classified under fiat. A lot of people will say, this is fiat. That's kind of an incorrect statement.
That's right.
No, this comes under the classification of fiat. It is private commercial paper classified under fiat. This silver coin, this copper, and what I don't carry all the time is also a gold coin, is the money. Are we clear?
Right.
Clear.
This is de jure.
All right.
This is de facto. When it comes to lawful argument, you better be clear on this, distinguished from this. Likewise, to really make claim on this that's hidden behind this, you better be the heir. The problem with this is that the heir has been declared a slave under fraud. And under unum sanctum operations and what is known as the doctrine of discovery, aliens have been claiming the estate of the Americans. And they built an entire political system around it called the United States of America Trading Company. And they take those last two words off of it and have been calling it a country since 1861. And that concept has been ingrained in the minds of the people. And all of the instruments that they have been producing since then, they incrementally and systematically, so that the people would not rebel, was stealing this. And the last major move they made on stealing this was 1964. So 1964, the last of these were minted at North America. Their minds and their intent is that their missionary work was complete, that Hiram Abiff was buried, was dead. In Masonry, they'll call it burial of Hiram Abiff. They struck him in the head, Jubilah, Jubilo, Jubilum. England, Ireland, and France under the Spanish Inquisition, and have taken over Morocco, and now are the keepers of the North Gate. And they told the people that this was the money. Then in around 1878, they took our Great Seal off the new. In 1928, they put the seal back on. This is after their corporation Shell crashed again, and they call it the Great Depression. That actually took place before, the 30s. They'll admit to the 30s, it started crashing around 24. This is why in 1925 they set up a new United States corporation, Shell, which I shared the papers with you, and we've been sharing with the people for the last couple of decades, so they can get it clear in their minds, because it's hard for people to accept. Not that the information is not available. It's difficult for people to accept that the United States is not a country. It's a private corporation, a conglomeration of Roman oligarchs who've been operating around the world, and particularly in America, as the United States of America Corporation, with a military arm, which are mercenaries, called the U.S. Industrial Complex, led by the Congress. And so Eisenhower referred to them as the Congressional Industrial Military Complex. In history, they'll write off the Congress word that Eisenhower said, and they'll just say Eisenhower warned the people of the military-industrial complex when that's not what he said. He said the congressional military-industrial complex. Because he knows, and all of them know, that the Congress and the senators operating at North America are really secret oligarchs, and they're really trustees for the United States corporation. They answer to London. And the judicial system operating at North America and Canada, which are really called court systems, are really auction blocks to effectuate the Spanish Inquisition under the doctrine of discovery. This is why the Pope of Rome did the motu proprio in 2013 and told them to cease and desist the operations, and promised and had government leaders and so-called religious leaders, the priesthood, from around the world in all walks of religions, club members, kiss the ring type thing, say we're stopping the doctrine of discovery, we're not going to do this anymore. And then of course, that's 2013. And then of course they breached it, and then he followed it up with that letter to Barack Obama called Civil Orders, which is actually a letter or command edict on top of the motu proprio of the shell of 2013. And they promised not to set up another corporate shell. So we're talking about the shells. So when I'm talking about the shells, we're talking about corporations which are the dead. Because remember, the people have been trained to speak of the corporations as the living. This is where the personage argument comes in with the Freedmen's Bureau closing in 1868. And the re-emphasis of the United States being designated as person. Why? So that they couldn't convert the people's estates. So this is why when you listen to the average person who does not understand this, they'll say things like, the city of Delaware sent me a letter today. He's speaking of Delaware City Corporation as a person. It's dead. It did nothing. It says nothing. It testifies to nothing.
There you go.
Are we clear? But the people are trained to give it personage, not knowing that when they speak that, they just transferred their birthright to the corporate owners.
Of jurisdiction.
Exactly. Which is why they do not teach civics or jurisdiction. You will never hear any persons that's talking about the nation of this and the nation of that and the nation of this and the nation of that ever teach in personam jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction, and territorial jurisdiction. Never. They'll talk nation of this and nation of that and never teach nationality. As a matter of fact, they'll talk against nationality while talking about nations.
That's right.
No,
That's right.
it's true. And then they'll talk about courts and systems and never talk about diversity. And never talk about Article 3 nor Article 3, Section 2. But they'll talk about court systems. And then they'll talk about people being abused and losing in these venues that they think are courts. And then start funding marching and praying organizations to deal with the symptoms of the problems that they keep encountering that are never going to be resolved because the whole platform is a fraud. And then you can show them this fraud and they'll call you out to lunch, you're a troublemaker. You're going to get these people killed talking about Constitution. We got all these people taking oath on that Constitution.
Right.
And they operate under de facto feudal law. So the conflicts, some of the conflicts that you see, is actually the people who have been pretending to be working on behalf of the people have always actually been feudalists. So they will attack you if you talk Constitution. while pretending that they are the constitutionalists. That is the politics that you see going on right now, whether you see Donald Trump and versus the Republican and Democratic Party. I didn't say Donald Trump versus the Democrats. Donald Trump versus the Republican and Democratic Party, both of which want him out of office, while pretending that they're working for the people. They've never done anything for the people and don't intend to do anything for the people. They are private oligarchs and multimillionaires because they've been robbing the people. And Donald Trump, with his activities, is threatening that platform. And that's not a defense of Donald Trump, it's just talking the truth of the politics. Now, one of the motivations of Donald Trump, and again, I have to repeat because people keep twisting what you say.
All right.
Because I'm not defending him.
That's
Just
right.
telling the truth of the politics.
He's not.
Is Donald Trump knows that if he doesn't fix this thing, it's over for everybody. Do you understand?
Yeah.
That's not also to imply that he's savior either.
Okay.
Do you understand? Because the nations of the earth have already determined that they're no longer going to fund the United States Corporation Army of the Jesuits, which means they're not going to buy any more U.S. corporation debt known as U.S. Treasury bonds, which means they're dead. Anybody that has them are dead. Are we clear? So which means all these beautiful malls are going to close up. All these big buildings that you see going on all over the place,
Yeah.
you're going to see the cranes going up and down, going up and down, going up and down, then go. All these cranes all over the place with these unfinished buildings. But a lot of this stuff is going on because they're trying to keep it looking like it's busy. Center City, Philadelphia, as an example. At any given time, you can ride around and count 13, 14 cranes. Right? Yet in Center City, if you are going in some of those buildings, 80% of those floors are empty above the first floor of the existing office buildings. So what's all this new office space for? I'm just telling you the truth. Now, what do you really understand about reality? They're building all of these cars and parking half of them in the desert. How long do you think that can go on? Not that it hasn't been going on, because it's been going on. Are we clear?
Yeah.
So now GM being, as an example again, largest employee other than the United States Corporation operations of the Jesuits.
General Motors.
Yes. And 54,000 went on strike, trying to get back what they were robbed from under Bush concessions in 2008. And as soon as they went on strike, General Motors closed 6 plants permanently. And one of the largest ones of GM in Ohio, they're not opening back up. So you can look for in the next few months some not minor changes, some radical changes in the entire auto industry. Because you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg.
It's just like the commercials you see. Don't pay more than a dime.
Yeah. It's a crime to pay money.
For a down payment.
And the deal of it is, in short order, they're not going to be able to give them away.
Shit, not even that.
In truth. Now, we can get into that, but we're not going to get into that right now. I'm just telling you, because you got to look at what's the tributary businesses, the restaurants, right? The secondary manufacturers, some make gearing for transmissions. Recently, because they already know what's down the pike. You know, we're not talking about what the public knows. I'm just talking about what's really going on. General Motors and Ford teamed up to make a common transmission for both of them. Because they already know what's coming, right? So really, transmission in the GM, transmission in the Ford, same thing. Woo. Do you understand? Now, right now they hit GM, and you know what they always do, they hit GM, then they come to Chrysler and Ford. What do you think is going to happen? Why do you think already that Ford and Chrysler and GM have been closing out sedan production for the last few years? They already know what's coming. The dummies don't. And the other corporations, they like to call themselves Wall Street and stuff, have been buying back their stock so that they could get a bigger dividend. Problem is, it froze up the credit market. So when they burn that cash out, guess what's happening? The bankers can't give any loans. This is what the 75 to 80 billion dollars a day that's been pumped into the bank systems was really all about. They themselves are killing this.
Just cream paper.
So now what are they going to do with these middle class people that have been used to living quite comfortably? Most of them happen to have rods and staffs to comfort you. The poor people don't have rods and staffs. This is why they're doing all these false flags. Like I said, with people going to some country music outing where you see thousands of people having fun, families and everything, children, mothers, motorhomes and everything, comfortable in America type thing. And all of a sudden, this crazy guy that was eating snail sandwiches earlier in the day launched out and started shooting from the 34th floor of a hotel building that has, the windows don't open up.
But he killed 50.
With more accuracy than you do on a firing range. With people being injured straight on, not on a downward level, and the people buy that.
And from different directions.
The people over here called Defacto government, guided by, secretly, these people who they think are their congressmen or senators, have done this to them. That's the real truth. Have been doing it to them and will continue to do it until they're stopped. Now that's the truth. Go ahead. Give her the mic. You got to raise your mic.
Real quickly.
The fact that the casino made the deal or the paid out all of these millions and millions to the family speaks to their complicitness with the de facto government. When you say,
consider this, to that multi-million, right? Why would they take that hit?
They have to be connected.
All right. Let's look at it two ways. Number one, this to them is not what it is to the masses. Example. You know, like when we're doing classes and we say, Tamara, copy some of this, copy this, and make sure everyone has this. You know, sometimes we do that when we have subject matter. right? To Roman, write this down, Roman Curia membership.
R-O-M-C-U-R.
Roman Curia membership. And remember this, because I'm giving you a canvas to remember. It's not that we haven't talked about these things before, but I'm giving you a canvas to look at the politics currently. All corporate heads and board members of all trusteeships of all corporate entities under the United States Corporation Subdivision of England and Canada operations are members of the Roman Curia. Meaning, name any corporation operating on the land at North America and Canada and know that whoever the CEO is a member of the Roman Curia. We're not talking about what they admit, we're talking about what is. Are we clear? So you can name any of them, Sears, Kmart, whatever you want to do, whatever bank, Wells Fargo, Citibank, Chase Manhattan, they're all members of the Roman Curia. To make it more simple for you to comprehend what's really going on, to the average mind of the average person, right? And it only got out because Trump happens to be in office. If Trump was in the office, it wouldn't be made public. And this has to do with people around him. So the masses are getting a little bit of it, though it's really more than what they're telling you. They're pumping 75 billion Federal Reserve notes into the banking system at North America every day. They've been doing it for the last few months. And admittedly, to the public, they have done it up to the day before yesterday, that they admit to. All right? Consider this. 75 billion a day for months. Now,
It's a lot of trees.
I'm going to remind you so you can get your head clear. Don't be impressed by that. Are we clear? We used to go around when I used to get off the station, we used to get the EPO newspaper.
EPO, yeah, I get it.
EPO, it's called EPO.
Electronics, yeah.
It look like EPOC, it's EPO.
EPO times.
They're not around there anymore. Now you got to order them. However, how many people know the old trick of Windex and newspaper makes one of the best mirror cleaners?
Yeah.
And how about all over the place, you see yesterday's newspapers given away? Well, this is the same thing to all members of the Roman Curia. Its value is only to the masses who don't understand what it really is. The game is to give you the impression that it has value to me. So, I'll roll one up with a 100 on it type thing, and take the lighter, light it, and then light a cigar with it. Wow, you know he's rich because he's lighting a cigar with $100 bill on check. Well, that's your impression. He knows this is no different than the toilet paper that you use every day. Why? Because different ones in different areas, as an example, some buildings over there,
Yeah.
took a minute to finish them,
It's taking a while.
but that already told me when I talked about it before that that person who started it, they had good intentions, but he's not a member of the Curia. If he was a member of the Curia, it would have been done. Are we clear?
Clear?
Now, let me say this to you. You're a member of the Curia. We want, after we've killed it, I'm talking about them. All right? the order, any one of the orders, Thule Society, Jesuits, etc., any of the subdivisions, right? We've killed the economy in certain areas of Wilmington. Now we're going to gentrify it and rebuild it. Right? You're highly skilled as a mixologist or making peanut butter sandwiches, Philly steaks. I mean, good at it. Yesterday. You're a Roman courier. Today, all right, so you're an envoy. You don't talk to me directly. I'll talk to you. You're, say, Chase Manhattan. We infuse 75 billion. She gets 2 billion. Your job is to go buy this section of Wilmington and get the people out. And there's a plan that's already in place. You didn't work for any of this because it's only toilet paper. Yet it's 2 billion. To these people, this is more than their lives. When you come amongst them, if you drop a stack of hundreds, well, shit, to you, you're only picking it up because you have to keep in their mind the perception of its value. But if they weren't around, because you already know, no different than the Romans know that the fiat that they give to the masses for value comes from the trees that they stole from the Aboriginal people and printed this stuff with the ink that they stole from the people's berries and told them it was money. And it runs 24/7 to buy the world and then to sell people back their own resources and make them work for it and make them think they're getting wealthy. Meanwhile, the bottom mission, they came to steal our gold and our silver, and they carried it out quite well. And the politics is to keep you from paying attention to that simple, elementary, child comprehensible fact. Because once they convinced you that this was the money, it was over.
That's right.
It wasn't then, and it isn't now. Point, fact. So the average person, when they hear about 75 billion being pumped into the bank system, it is because the world's no longer buying UST bonds and they have to fund the system. Also, their license was revoked months back. They're not even supposed to be doing this anymore, but because the corruption is so deep, they're continuing to do it. This is another issue with the battle that they're dealing with against Donald Trump, whose job is to help fix this thing. And again, like I said, I'm not defending Donald Trump, I'm just telling you the politics. You can take it as you will. But if you think that it's not going to affect you, I suggest that you don't hold your breath. If you decide to hold your breath, call the mortician first. And make your preps. Because that's what's up. Now, the deal of it is, back to some other conversations that we were having earlier, Dr. Naila.
Yes.
We're talking airship. And what some people call hubris. Well, they got some testicles to be talking like that. If you understand trust law and airship, you know daggone well they're not going to honor any of the bonds that they have. They're not going to honor anything related remotely to due process because they're feudalists and they're imposters. To do other than that would be to dismantle their own system. But they have to maintain the art of pretending to be the republic. Meaning they have to wear the masks in spite of it all. And as the people wake up, the mask becomes obvious. You know, they're at the mask, you know, like you take the Photoshop, you know, like here, this is in the yearbook, that thing,
Profit.
right? Well, now they got the panoramic cameras and stuff, and it's taking your whole form, and you notice the stick you got here with the mask. That's damn. They looking at 3 dimensions and stuff. The mask they got there with that stick, and it's holding the mask up and stuff, and hey, you know. And then you got the 3D glasses on type thing. This is what's really happening. It's just that the people are still groggy, and but they're getting pain, real pain. They're not going to be allowed to ignore this anymore. Are we clear? Problem is some of them got guns. A lot of them got guns. Like really. And this is what's worrying them. So they're arguing about Trump, but they're really targeting the people. So the people are saying, yeah, they're going to get Trump and that legal fetcher and everything, and stuff like that, when actually they're the criminals. They're doing projection, right? Because they know that this middle class, when, you know how it is, they're so used to poor people being shafted by the bankers, they didn't think it was going to happen to them. They didn't think they were going to be thrown under the bus. Because they've been beneficiaries of the corruption for so many generations, they got comfortable and didn't think they were going to get sold out. However, they also still have guns. And they're not into oodles and noodles. You know, I love oodles and noodles. I can do the oodles and noodle thing. You know, this is hors d'oeuvre type stuff, you know. Cayenne pepper and stuff, and some fresh onions and green peppers and chunky, you know. I'm rolling, you know. But I suggest that the guy that's used to that Ferrari, second car in the garage and the second house in the Poconos and stuff, when they come and Susie can't go to college, and they're pretending that everything's well, and Wells Fargo's coming after the main estate, that they're not going to sit around and march and pray and talk about, let's go call Al Sharpton and march and shit. No, they're not. They really aren't. They're going to look for them oligarchs called congressmen and senators who are really doing this, and we're doing it all the time. And they knew it, but they hid it from the public. That's where the worry is. If you look at that, you'll understand why all of them people are just loosely referred to as Democrats, which is kind of improper. That's what's really going on. This is the hatred of Donald Trump. But if Donald Trump doesn't fix this, none of the trade deals that he's trying to make are going to work. And the whole thing is going down. But meanwhile, while he's trying to fix it, a lot of industries are going to collapse, and they're going to make them collapse. And I'm suggesting to you right now that some persons who claim to be union leader guys, who are members of the Roman Curia,